What's going on, everybody? It's Childish. We're back out of the game, coming at you with episode 3 of our Beginner's Guide series. Again, thank you guys so much for your support, and thank you guys so much for clicking on this video. We have, once again, Epic Butter to help us out and bring you guys the next stage of this guide. Super excited to have him once back again. Epic Butter, how are you doing today, sir?
Oh my God, I'm great, and I'm so glad to be back. Last week, I was hanging out with Evan, with Come To Us. Happy that they were hosting me, and really happy this is going to go on our playlist as well. That was promoted, so I'm just really excited to keep this going. The game, I'm seeing more and more people on the Discord. I'm seeing more and more new players, so it's getting more and more important that we get these out.
Yeah, most definitely. So again, if you guys haven't had a chance to check this out, Epic Brother and I created the Ultimate Beginner Guide series for Soulstruck. We're bringing these episodes generally about every week or so if we can. We'll leave a playlist up at the top right here, as well as Epic Butter is going to have some content in addition to this playlist on his channel. I will leave a link in the description down below. But we talked about gear in our first episode, as well as skills leading up to the legendaries in our second episode. But a third episode is going to be focused on attributes, and I'm going to leave the floor to my man Epic Butter to take it away.
Yeah, so I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to talk about it. Attributes is one of the items that you can kind of use to manipulate certain game attributes. If you kind of think about it from a Magic the Gathering point of view,
Yep.
you have a certain set of rules, and then you get a rule that says you get something that breaks that rule or something that adds to it. So when you first get to your attribute, this page, the first page, is already unlocked. And generally, what I tend to recommend is you go through the first page and you pretty much grab anything that is offensive: attack, defense, HP, recovery. This changes basic attack to AoE. That's really important. Attack speed, basic attack damage. And then over here, what we're really starting to get to is some of the more important ones. You'll notice that they have these kind of different framing, and each of these pages will have them. So we'll kind of go over some of the more important ones and what is important about them. So this one changes your basic attack to AoE. It's not that important. What is more important is your attack speed. This increases your attack speed by 10%. This is pretty critical when you're first starting at the game. And really what's also critical is this plus 150% attack, this crit rate, this crit damage, and those are the main critical things. What I will say about the first page is Weapon Master is only really good if you have guns. Generally, it's not good for the Great Sword. You kind of just nullify attack. For daggers, you dash, so that kind of messes up with some of your placements if you're using a skill like Unbound. If you're using orbs, kind of the same thing, except you dash away, so it actually kind of helps with Unbound, but again, it kind of messes with your timing and your placement, and it does add an animation that gets in your way of your triggers. So that's kind of Weapon Master. So I actually use a gun, so I can take advantage of the 10% lucky crit chance. That is basically 4 times your critical damage. So it's huge, but that is generally what Weapon Master is. And the general recommendation is go all the way up to Trenchant Strike if you can, and then we kind of move on to the next page. From here, the main important one is really this one right here, Elemental Insight, and that removes the element efficiency penalty. So what that is your game wants you to learn the kind of the ways of the avatar, where water is stronger against fire, fire is stronger against earth, earth is stronger against wind. And what it does is that if you're using a weaker element against a strong element, so if you're going like wind against earth, you won't be penalized for that. So then it opens up the library of skills for you to use in case like Unbound actually is your best skill, but you're having trouble with an earth boss, you don't want to be penalized. Another new thing that they did was in the past, physical was neutral, so there was no strength against it. You just had to be stronger than the content. They actually changed that, so physical is now strong against itself. So you can use physical skills against physical bosses and do extra damage.
Very
So
interesting.
that's kind of cool. How does that actually interact with the penalty, I'm not actually sure. That's like kind of a new thing,
Right.
but this is the most important skill, or the most important like kind of button here. And because of the pet tree, we've kind of abandoned a lot of things because the pet tree gives us more um, like it fulfills a lot of the roles that we would be giving up here. I want to say like this is additive. So in the beginning, it feels pretty good. It feels pretty okay. This is feels really great if you're in that mid game where fire gives you extra crit chance, water, doesn't consume MP. You get more cooldown with wind. You get health with earth. So this is when you're like kind of using all skills and you're kind of just using like the best skills you have and not necessarily in that mono element build yet. But
Okay.
as of right now, this is not really super important. And for 36 points, it's a heavy investment into. Well, this one, Adept Witch, this is primarily used for guild boss. So it's mainly used so that you can manually use your skills, but you can still hit auto on combat. So your character pathing is still all done by itself and you manually control the spells. So that's kind of more of a piloting thing. This is not necessarily required for everybody. If you're okay with how the game is automatically casting spells, you don't really have to worry about it. I will say this attack speed does end up being a little important if you don't have any other way of increasing your attack speed.
Yeah. And I was going to say too, like for me, I have about, this is now, we're about a month and a half into my game and I have about 110 skill points. So, going back to Negrito, I kind of pretty much did everything outside of the Power of Souls because I just heard a lot of feedback. I'm probably sure it was from you talking about how that is not as important as some of the other ones. And then I moved on to the second tree, again, getting that elemental insight. Once I kind of understood what it was, like, wow, that's super important. You got to get that. And then I went to the left down so that I can work my way over to the excessive adrenaline because, as you guys know, in the previous videos, we talked about the stats, and how important they were, especially the attack speed and being able to, being able to attack and proc for various things as fast as possible. So that's where I'm kind of at right now. I got 7 points in there.
Yeah, yeah. And then I think right after this, you start going into your steel and you start upgrading it. This is where the game starts to guide you to it so that you kind of start getting to relics. And this is where you get into that third page, which is commonly referred to as the Relic and Ally page. So this page is very interesting because as soon as you open this page, you almost want to dump everything else or as much as you can without sacrificing too much. So like this is where like you can dump all the way up to here and sacrifice a lot of these to really open up your relic page because you really want that 7th relic because over here you get some plus 30 for each relic
Oh, wow.
equipped legendary or higher. So, at 7 relics, you get 210, right? So this ends up being like a huge source
It's
of
massive.
additional damage.
Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, and this is what gives you that 7th relic right there. So this is like one of those like you progress with the game. So you also have to make sure you're upgrading your relic slots, and here you're making sure that you're going through and you're going through construction and you're making sure you're building it, making sure that you like are managing your resources. Because one of the things that I would say is they kind of don't tell you what the order of things to build is. What they did was they made the things that came after the shelter was done really expensive. So, for example, you'll be asked to build this the soul library, and this is basically your star library. It costs a lot of green. I think it's actually more important that you build up your relics before you build up your what is it called, your soul laboratory. So that's something that they added after. So keep in mind that they added that after the fact to kind of give it some like, okay, you have something to spend your green materials on.
Right. Yeah, I was going to say, when it comes to some of the stuff, just kind of giving my perspective for anybody that's listening on this video. Again, moving into the game about 2 months here, I personally have the majority of the buildings anywhere between level 6 and level 8 with 6 of my relic stocks kind of opened up. So, that initial wave of resources that you get in the game, In addition to what you obtain through the events here, is you save it for a while up until you move into the shelter, and of course you get that initial construction like craziness kind of going on, but then it comes to a halt, and of course you're just gonna have to sit back and wait until you get those resources outside of buying a few things in the shop or whatnot. So, but the good thing about it is that I felt when I came into the game, there was still a good amount of resources to kind of get you started off on the right track, and like I said, open up the floor for like I said, 5 or maybe 6 relics here, but I do realize now the importance of resources and how important it is to manage them wisely, because if you don't, you're going to be stuck in a rut and, basically looking for the next Epic Butter video to help you out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so I generally recommend that it's okay to buy like ore and timber from the store here, because this gives you up to 100 a day
Mm-hmm.
of each.
Yep.
And it doesn't cost that much. Like it costs 30,000 all said and done. I know it sounds like a lot, but when you're building out your shelter and you're still using greens, like this is the best bang for your buck. Just get it done. And once you get it done, once it's asking for blues, instead of buying these, what you do is you just change your blues or change your greens into blues. So you literally just go here,
Mm-hmm.
you look at your greens, and then like I have 8 here. You just get it from your bags, or you get it from idling online, and then you just transform it. So you end up getting a lot of them. It ends up adding up pretty quickly, because not only are you getting greens, blues are also dropping, purples are also dropping.
Mm-hmm.
So what you can do is you can always upgrade up. You can't downgrade your
Right.
material.
Right.
Yeah, so that's one of the things. Now, when we talk about the 4th page, and this was like the final page for a while, and there's 2 kind of key components here that I really want to talk about. Number 1 is cycle of power. Well, actually, there's 3, but number 1 is cycle of power. Every damage, every 1% beyond 1% crit rate exceed beyond 1%. I read that horribly, like I usually do, but point is, any crit rate over 100% equals 1% in damage. So if you have over 100% crit rate, then guess what? That all turns into damage. That's
Mm-hmm.
something that's really, really great. So you don't have to really worry too much about going over 100%. And then the second thing I want to talk about is this final damage here. This is pretty important.
Okay.
Plus 60%. This is one of your first sources of consistent final damage. And then over here, this is probably one of the most important things, is Epicure, which is your food. Food is basically one of the most important aspects of the game. Anytime you're doing content, you should be eating food. If you're beating the boss and suddenly you're not beating him, you look at your character and be like, are you hungry?
Mm-hmm.
And the
Right.
answer is probably. You're probably hungry. This one is just like kind of just extra bonus damage. It's just 5% dealing, in the big scheme of things, this probably doesn't scale up very well. But so the most important thing is getting this food and this final damage here.
Okay.
These are the 2 most important things. Then to talk about food, the 3 most important foods I like to say are the smoke skewer. It's just pure attack for the beginning. It's cheap. It's readily available in bursts. Then I would say as soon as you can, go for the sea bream. This hugely increases attack and move speed. And then finally, when you move into it, it's dragon eggs. And dragon eggs got a huge buff in this last update, because it not only gives final damage, it also gives all element resistance penetration. And similar to crit rate, any element resistance penetration over 100% just gets turned into element damage. So this got a huge buff. This became one of the most important food in the game.
Okay.
So this is you basically get it by farming ogre here that you turn into dragon eggs in the green area of the map.
Gotcha. I was gonna say, for
Where you
me, I
can,
actually really wasn't even focused on food up until you made a comment about it. I understand, like with the previous games that we played for the Summons War family, especially Summons War Chronicles, the importance of food when you're going against guild bosses, raid bosses, stuff like that. Very, very good. But I was like, well, if I'm just still clearing stuff and it's relatively easy, I'm like, man, I just keep on doing it and save my food. But since you said like some of these foods are really relatively cheap, it's just an added bonus that can help you kind of accelerate your progression, huh?
yeah. So the reason why I like to progress stage as much as I can is because it really makes these tokens like as valuable as possible. So then when you're popping these to get more like resources, you're really getting the bang for your buck if you can squeeze out a few extra stages.
Right.
So yeah, that's the way I see it. So like there were definitely moments where it's like, oh, this is actually really important and I can't progress without it. So that's kind of like the food aspect of it. Now, the final kind of attribute, and this is going to be a little bit further away for those new players because it does require Steel 10. But this is where we talk about dumping everything that you don't need. So like I had some points in ally tree that I dumped. I dumped all element resistance. I dumped all element boost. I dumped element master. I dumped all of my basic attack damage to basically go down the pet tree. And the pet tree kind of has two major components. Number one is that gloriousness. That's that 1% over every 100 gets turned into element damage.
Okay.
And then the second one is getting 2 pets.
Gotta have 2 pets, yeah.
Well, it sounds cute, like, oh, 1, 2's better than 1, haha. Like what really makes pets incredible is they added like a new damage category and a new kind of damage receiving category. And the damage receiving category we've seen a little bit in Ultimate Gear. For example, in Overwhelm, we see like, okay, if they're under the status effects, they'll take more damage by 11%, but that wasn't really well explained. We just kind of like assumed we understood it, and we're just like, okay, so is that just plus 11% more damage? No. It's something else completely. And the best way to kind of showcase kind of the power of pets and kind of why it's so important to unlock 2 at once is because really every kind of mono element build has this kind of setup where you want a pet that gives you physical crit damage over a specific period of time, and then you want a pet that says increasing type damage received by X amount over a certain amount of time. And there is a cycle of these pets, so every element has them. So for fire, it's Igniculus. For water, it's actually, I think it's Dracoid.
Dracoid, yeah.
I think one of these have it too. Yeah, so Fluffy as well. Verdmonk, Rudy Tails, and Cryvern. Cryvern, like stylistically, is my favorite because he's like a toddler. He cries and he makes your ears bleed, and then he causes bleed. Yeah, so he's like my favorite right now.
Right.
Maybe because I have a toddler and I'm just like, oh, I can relate.
Yeah, I can definitely relate.
But yeah, that's generally it for the attribute tree. I hope you found it helpful. So, if you are recapping really quick, the biggest things are like if you're just starting out, make sure to grab attack, crit damage. For here, make sure you grab the elemental insight. For this, make sure you just go all the way down, grab the number 7 relic, and what you want to do is just make sure you use legendary or mythical relics. For here, Soul Smasher and food. If your guy is hungry, you should feed him. And then over here, it's Glorious Nest, and make sure you have 2 pets.
Sounds good. Well, all right, my man. Thank you again for giving us an update, bringing us episode 3 of our Ultimate Beginner's Guide series. Once again, fam, this is provided to you by the one, the only Epic Butter. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't be able to do this. So if you guys want to show your support that you guys been showing me over the past few years now, give him some love. I'll leave a link in the description down below for his YouTube channel. Again, he does provide a little bit of content here when he gets an opportunity to. Him, like me, we are fathers, so we're trying to make the best of our time when we can and give you guys that content. But Epic Butter, again, thank you again for coming on board in this video for me. I'm excited to continue the series with you and bring some more content out there for the community.
Yeah, thank you so much, Childish. It's been really wonderful working with you, and I hope to keep this series going.
Oh yeah, definitely, my man, definitely. All right, guys, that's gonna be it for the video. Thanks again for watching, and we will see you guys all in the next one. Take care.